Hello and welcome to a Best of 2018 episode of Dude, Is This Thing On? I'm Tyler Daswick, and joining me as always, our producer, Emilio Cariotti.
How's it going, everybody?
Emilio, we were doing our Best of 2018 year in review episode. We've come full circle. Our first recorded episode, I don't think we ever published it, but recorded was Best of 2017.
Right? I want to say it's our first. I want to say it's our first published one because we had a couple of recording ones where I was like, "Well, this is dog shit."
Oh, really?
we didn't put it out, and we haven't gotten much better. People always tell me they can barely hear me on my recordings. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I do all the production and stuff like that. It sounds great on my end, but I guess I still have some stuff I gotta learn.
Well, we hope everyone hangs with us. I guess for this
all
year,
our adoring fans.
Yeah, but we're basically going to go back and forth and call out some of our favorite things from the past year. Maybe we talked about them on the show. Maybe they were a GB deep cut. But we're bringing it all back. And what was that?
Nothing. Just don't make me horny.
Yeah.
GB deep cuts, Tyler, please.
Holy shit.
It's only 3:46.
God damn it!
Wait for the sun to go down.
But and so we're gonna go back and forth and talk about the year and all of our favorite things and maybe some frustrations, some feelings, and we're gonna leave it all out on the table.
Yeah, right. We're gonna go over the whole year.
All right,
2018, the longest fucking year in human history.
Yeah, dude. God. But just a lot of ... on that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to actually start by asking you this sort of opening question because we decided we were going to sort of just each pick 3 things that we wanted to call out, and I kind of had a hard time getting there. I don't.
Yeah, it's same. We delayed this podcast by a week just because we were like, I haven't thought of anything.
Yeah, so I guess I wanted to ask you, did the process of trying to figure out what you wanted to talk about sort of pull out any impressions you had of sort of the year in culture of 2018?
Dude, yeah, you kind of asked me that question before we started. You texted me that question. I honestly I don't have a good answer for you. This whole year, the reason I said it's the longest fucking year in human history is just everything, man, with this fucking year. Just everything with this fucking year. I honestly, picking these 3 things, I don't even know if they're the most culturally significant. The reason I picked the 3 things that I picked is because they're the things that I remember the most looking back. I'm like, what do I remember the most enjoying or viewing or just stood out to me the most? And these were them. Being able to say, these are definitively the most culturally impactful things that happened in the past year is I don't know. So many fucking things happened this year. Yeah. I mean, just if you're into politics, God bless you, because that's the worst of it. But as far as just Hollywood and the gaming industry and music, there wasn't a part of American culture that wasn't touched by this year, right or wrong, mostly wrong.
Right.
But we could have talked about anything. We could have talked about Kanye West, as far as music goes. We're going to be talking about movies plenty, but just a tidbit, Black Klansman is really big fucking it doesn't get enough traction in my personal opinion because Black Panther also came out.
Yeah.
But it was that Jesus, biting. The tension with that movie was palpable in the theater.
Yeah.
As far as video games though, great year for video games. We probably say that every single year, but you know what? Video game industry, it was on a total high. It was in the black. It was in the black for 2018, where most everything else was in the red. So I don't know. To answer that question, I just don't fucking know, Tyler. I don't know if you can answer it.
Well, I think it was so difficult to sort of skim off a top tier, which I felt like I had to end up picking between a lot of things I thought were kind of A- B+ stuff, where I was and the 3 things I ended up picking, I picked for really specific reasons, none of which are because this is the best X I watched, played, listened to, whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah, no, exactly. I feel exactly the same. Especially, just spoiler alert, one of our picks is Red Dead Redemption 2. Like, I picked that and I'm like, was this really the best, or was it just really good and I played it like 2 months ago and that's why it still has like an impact on me? So I don't know. I mean, we're gonna dissect it and find out.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, you know, I don't want to spoil all the things we're going to talk about, so I'll just say this. Like, I think for pretty much everything we picked, they're all marked by like most of them are marked by really small, passionate followings. Some of them stirred up a little more controversy, a little more debate, but they all sort of have these like small niche communities surrounding them that got really, really excited about them, are still advocating for them. But nothing we picked, and I still wonder if like anything was like this year, nothing we picked for this episode was really like a mass cultural item. Like, we're not going to talk about Black Panther. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so there was nothing this year, except maybe Red Dead, which would be the first thing we talk about, married that like mass praise and excitement with like pure critical success and acclaim. Like, there were very few things that everyone experienced and everyone thought was really, really good at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And then also we agreed were very, very good, because
right.
I mean, you could look at something, and we talk about Black Panther a lot. It's hard not to, because it's like one of the biggest movies of this year. Yeah. And it was universally accepted. It was a universal success, and yet we were both like, like, it was okay, you know? So there was a lot of that, and then maybe it's just our snobbery, but we decided to pick things that were really dear to us that maybe didn't touch, like, a huge audience, but if they had, probably would have had a really important, like, impact on the way we retroactively thought of this year.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, that being said, we're probably going to start with the most popular thing on our list.
Yep.
You chose this one, so why don't you kick us off?
I mean, well, we just did episodes on this like not too long ago, because it literally just came out in October. So Red Dead Redemption 2, it's a cowboy video game. It's a really good cowboy video game.
Yes, sir.
It's a follow-up to probably one of the best, like, open world story games, probably one of the best stories in the genre of westerns.
Yes.
Red Dead Redemption, and it's just a really anticipated game. Like, I'm not saying anything that's going to be like a revelation to anybody who follows video games or Red Dead Redemption. Like, it was a massive achievement, and kind of the next step in the way that we think about storytelling and open world environments. And it came at a time where open world games are so kind of run of the mill these days, that pretty much almost every single company that has a franchise, you fucking name it, is having open world elements, either full blown quote unquote open world experiences, or like open world light, where you have like less linear paths through levels or design or whatever the fuck they're doing for their game, right?
Sure.
Like, I would say honorable mentions, but I'm not a fan of either one of these games. But dishonorable mentions are fucking Far Cry 5 and fucking Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which not to poo-poo like other YouTubers, but I was watching a Game Ranks like video where they're like, here are the best games of 2018. And I'm like, all right, Game Ranks, fucking lay it on me.
Yeah.
And they got to their open world thing, and apparently everyone at that office both love Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Far Cry 5. They thought that they deserved like best game. It was agonizing.
Weird.
Like, I don't maybe I'm just an idiot. Maybe I'm an idiot. I just don't see it. I don't understand what the fuck people see in those two games. They're garbage. I digress. Let's talk about Red Dead Redemption 2.
How did Red Dead zig while all the other open world games were zagging?
It's so easy, Tyler. It's like the easiest fucking thing ever. The world had shit in it. That's all you needed. It had shit in the world. There was stuff in between the trees, you know? If you went into the forest, you could bump into something fun. If you go into the fucking forest in Far Cry 5, the only thing you're going to run into is a pissed off turkey and some rednecks with a fucking semi-truck. Literally, that is it. In the most inconvenient fucking time. Just go back and see that. Just if you're interested, go back and listen to the fucking episode where I talk about Far Cry 5. What a garbage game! But here's a perfect look at two games on complete different parts of the scale. Far Cry and Ubisoft in general, when they do open world games, not to poo-poo them, but they have a fucking history of doing this. Yes. They will make a massive open world game, tout it as this fucking free roaming experience where you can do anything that you want, and then you get your hands on the game, and it is probably one of the most boring open worlds. If it's a pretty looking open world, that's great. They usually are nice and pretty, but there's nothing to do. Like, as far as side missions go, they're either really repetitive fetch quests or just like racing stuff that is like been overplayed in open world games like forever. You know, every single open world game has like racing elements or some mini game bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption has that stuff too. It's been the foundation of like Rockstar games since like GTA 3 probably, you know? Uh-huh. But what they did this time around was, they fleshed out fucking everything. Everything from Red Dead Redemption 1 was given like 20 more steps of detail. And at first it's very daunting, like we talked about, where it's kind of overwhelming. Like even firing a gun is now like a 3-step process and pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
But once you get the hang of that, you feel so accomplished. There's more fun in firing a pistol in Red Dead Redemption 5 than there is in most of Far Cry 5. Yeah. Red Dead Redemption 2 than there is in most of Far Cry 5, right? Like, that's just because they really looked at everything in that game as far as like menus go, which they maybe got a little overzealous with, but as far as menus go, hunting mechanics, survival mechanics, how to train your horse, like managing not necessarily property but your camp and stuff like that, interacting with all the characters, multiple side missions that actually felt like real fleshed out fucking missions. That's not to say I don't have gripes with Red Dead Redemption 2, like that whole fucking island scene was stupid, but but you know, it's a near perfect game, and in an open world experience where literally anything can go wrong or right, near perfect is pretty much like a 10 out of 10. And I would still say that was one of the best games of the year. So that is why I chose Red Dead Redemption 2 to talk about, even though we kind of just got done talking about it like 2 months ago.
Yeah, I think what I will remember it most for, aside from the experience of playing it, I think as a cultural item specifically in this year, it's such a cool example of a developer responding to hype and anticipation in a very uncompromising way. It's not conforming at all. It was a very particular vision for how they wanted to tell their story and the kind of experience they wanted to give players. And even in areas like, you know, we spent our first episode of the 3 parts of that series of our review for the game talking about that opening 6 hours that is really slow paced, that's really methodical, that it really takes its time and serves to try to like warm you up to all these really intense, minute mechanics. And they had such a specific vision that they veered away from all these things that we're seeing infect all other games of just like, it's not even like the biggest map you've ever seen in a game. It's just...
No, it's not even as big as their previous game, GTA 5. Like, we talked about that, you know? But
they went small, they went dense, things like you're not going to see dumb stuff like skill trees or like, you know, weird like RPG elements. You just... You know, you can cut your hair, you can pick what guns you carry, and you can carve a design into the finish. You know, it's like that. It's that kind of thing. Like, they really stick to sort of the confines of the Western genre, which means, you know, there's not going to be like all kinds of crazy upgrades, and They're very true to that, and I think that it's going to be. I'm compelled to see how developers carry that forward or not. I mean, Rockstar is so singular; they can make anything, and people are excited about it because they are great technical crafters of video games.
Mm-hmm.
But I do wonder, will this change? Like I can imagine you rolling your eyes already. Will this change the way Ubisoft does things? Will this change the way the people who make I don't know, games like Horizon Zero Dawn or other games, like will it change the way they respond to hype and anticipation in terms of, like, are we just going to give the people what they want, or are we just going to stick to our guns, make the game we want to make, and not worry about those things? I'm interested in that. And
I mean, I think yeah, I mean, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit at that Ubisoft comment, but like, I think the developers that really are in tune with their craft, because I mean, despite what Ebert says, video games are art, and like, developers are artists. If they're in tune with their craft, like, I think they'll learn from the lessons of better developers or more experienced developers. But like, some developers, they don't care. They're in it for the money, man. Like Ubisoft, I'm sure there's plenty of people who work at Ubisoft that are great artists. I mean, I can tell, like, it's all their games are like ooze visual appeal and stuff like that. And you can see the trailers for the new Far Cry that's coming out. Like, aesthetically, it looks fucking cool. I'm not an idiot. I'm not gonna fall for it again, you dumbasses. But like, aesthetically, it looks nice. I'll maybe rent it. Like, there's no way I'm gonna spend $60 on it unless we do an episode. Which, okay, fine. But But like, I think developers like Ubisoft and like, EA is another one that, like,
there you go.
They just don't give a fuck. Like, they don't. So long as they're making money, they don't give a shit. Like, they will make up any excuse in the book as to why they made some decision, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's money based, and you can tell in their games. And people like defend. Like, I've been playing a lot more Battlefield 5, and, it has gotten better. I'm enjoying it a little bit more. Once you really learn that, like, oh, this is more like a Call of Duty than it is like a Battlefield, you start getting better at it. I'm top of the charts again, man. Like, I'm back to being, like, one of the best players, like, that I know. It's still not that fun. Like, I'm not enjoying myself nearly as much as, like, Battlefield 1, and that's just because, like, they just don't... Everything's fine with them. They're like, okay, well, we got our base, so we don't really need to change too much else. And they'll tweak little things here and there, but I don't think big developers like them will necessarily learn from GTA or from Red Dead Redemption. But I'm a fucking pessimist, man. But I'm a pessimist who loves being wrong. I would love to be wrong. I would love for the next Far Cry to be as good as Far Cry 2 or 3, but I doubt it.
Yeah. Well, that is... Red Dead Redemption 2.
We gotta move on. We just blew another fucking 20 minutes on that game. That's how good it is. If you haven't played it, play the fucking game.
It is. It's a landmark.
All right, your turn with 8th grade.
Yes, 8th grade is our second item in the Best of 2018 lineup. This movie was indie movie from one of my favorite studios, A24. It's probably my favorite movie of the year, and I've learned to delineate favorite and best, but it is my favorite. It's I picked it for a lot of reasons. Personally, it's directed by Bo Burnham, who gave one of my most memorable, like, work experiences this year. In that conversation, that was
the classic hand job behind the desk.
Yeah.
Tyler,
Yeah.
You never forget your first.
Yeah.
And Bo was a good one. He was a good one.
But that was like a cool bucket list item for me. But the movie's also really good, and it's about the title. It's about this girl who is about to graduate 8th grade, and it follows her last week as she navigates all these super uncomfortable modern social circles. She doesn't have any friends, but she's invited to this pool party where she doesn't know anybody. She fights with her dad. She throws her phone and breaks the screen. She goes to like a shadow day at high school, and kind of like has all these strange social times that are, yes, like about middle school, but are more often about how our anxieties in real life are reflected online in our digital experience and our time on our phones, and how all our anxieties on our phone infect like our real life. And some people say it's a horror movie. It's not scary. It's only scary in just how it makes you feel. Like, it is so reminiscent of those uncomfortable middle school years. It makes you curl up in a ball. And but why I picked it more than anything else is I wanted something on this list that could have only come out this year. And 8th Grade is a time capsule of a movie. Like, so many of its jokes are going to be dated and are dated already, because they are jokes about, 2018 memes and 2018 references, and it uses 2018 technology, and there are tons of shots of phones and people scrolling through Instagram and people using Snapchat and things like that. Like, it's going to be a very dated movie, but I really love it for that, because this year captured such a specific feeling and brought out all of these, especially as someone who works online and is adjacent to all of these people, like, consuming what I do on the internet and reacting to it very publicly. It captured so many of those feelings for me, and not in like a preachy way or a Black Mirror-ish kind of way, or a radical way, but it's like, here's a middle schooler who feels just as uncomfortable as you do. And it was like, oh wow, like, and that was a strange experience, but a really, really cool one, and one I'm like really, like, weirdly, like, thankful for, because it clarified so much. So yeah, that's why it's on there. It's a little movie,
man,
but
that's awesome, man. I just sat back and listened to that entire thing, and that was a good sell. It was a good pitch. I will say one thing actually did like kind of pique my interest and made me think of something kind of maybe a little outside the box. But
yeah,
you were like, well, it's going to get dated real fast. It's got a bunch of like 2018 references and stuff like that. I mean, I still go and watch The Breakfast Club. I wasn't even alive when that movie fucking came out, you know? And like that's all like 80s references and 80s style and everything like that, and like 80s humor, but like there's something classic about John Hughes movies that like are intergenerational, and there's no telling that like maybe this movie is going to be the same if it can bridge that age gap like really fucking easily, where we as 24-year-old men are feeling with this like 11-12-year-old girl. Who the hell like says that it can't in 50 years be a classic that people go back to and be like, wow, look at the format of that phone and blah 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 blah. And what does I don't know, deep fried memes mean? Let's find out. Let's like watch 8th Grade, So I don't know. I'm going to be excited to see. I still haven't seen that movie. I'm ashamed to say that I haven't seen that movie because I feel like I would really like it. But yeah, I am excited to see it, and then in 20 years see it again and maybe still be mesmerized. So good job, Bo Burnham, man. Like, you put out one of the best movies of the year, supposedly. So tip of the cap to you.
Yeah, dude's super talented.
Talented. Gives a good hand job.
All right. Our third thing is also something we've talked about on the pod before. I think we had a whole episode about it.
About a year ago, almost. Probably about a year ago, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And that is Dave Chappelle's special, The Bird Revelation. Why don't you take it away?
So before everyone starts scrolling through their fucking phones or whatever, the movie technically came out in 2017, but it dropped on the 31st of December 2017. So for all intents and purposes, it's like a New Year's release. It's clearly intended to be watched going into the new year, which is important because I think The Bird Revelation was Yeah, I don't know if you have ever had this experience. I don't know how many like uncles you have in your life, but have you ever had, if you have like a political uncle or like a deep thinker kind of uncle, have you ever like sat down with that uncle and just like let them explain like the facts of life to you? That was kind of like what this felt like to me, where I would sit down with Uncle Dave Chappelle with like a scotch and just like my headphones on, like listening to this fucking thing, and he pretty much laid out what the soul, he laid out like the soul of America at that time, end of 2017 rolling into 2018, the second year of this fucking chaos that is like the Trump administration. Regardless of what you think of the guy, like you can't argue that it's not chaotic,
right?
And him pretty much just explaining like, this is what's happening, this is how I feel about it personally, and yeah, it's one man's opinion, but I really respect that one man, not only as a comedic voice, but just as someone who's kind of a philosopher. And I said this before, and I said this again, like, he kind of comes off as like the Socrates, like, you know, of our time. He's like, we're kind of living in this era where we don't really have philosophers like we did back in the early 1900s. Was really, I think, the last time like where there were a lot of Irish and Russian like philosophers preaching their ideas of, you know, communism and socialism and alcoholism and all this fucking shit, right? Like maybe you agreed with it, maybe you didn't, but it was a time of great thinkers, and maybe we lost that somewhere along the way. But I found it again in the Dave Chappelle, and particularly in this set where it's so informal and he's just on stage and he's just I don't know if it's a true set or not. Like that's part of his craft. Like that's why he's kind of a master of his craft, is he's able to blend that line, kind of like what Louis C.K. did. Whatever you think about him making his belly button into a swimming pool, if you could say it so poetically. Whatever you think of the guy, he kind of did this too, where you could never tell if he was just riffing or if it was an actual like set that he had like set up punchlines and stuff like that, right? And Dave Chappelle does that too. He just lights up a couple cigarettes and he sits there and he's like, wow, this is fucked up, yeah? Like, what's going on in Hollywood? This is the town of date rape and dick breath. That's his opening line. And from there kind of sets the tone of like, okay, I'm going to talk about what the fuck's going on in Hollywood, what the fuck is going on in society in general, and he encapsulates all of it with this really great story from this amazing book, which he turned me on to. I ended up reading it after just to like understand kind of that set even more.
What was the book again?
Pimp by Iceberg Slim. If you haven't read it, man, like, I mean, it's a really graphic book. It's about a pimp in like the 1920s to like 1940s. But it's about how the pimp learns how to like break women and use people to make profit, use them literally like being disposable. And Dave Chappelle kind of compares that to his own experiences in Hollywood. And Hollywood, you can really take the way that it functions, you can really take for the broader way that kind of politics function, because they see people a lot in the same way. Like they see people as votes instead of money necessarily. They see people as votes. And so it's very comparable to the bigger picture of just the country as a whole. And, you know, it's kind of dark. You're not going to like yourself for laughing at some of the shit, but the fact that you're laughing means that there's some truth to it. You know, that's what comedy kind of like reveals to us all, is like, yeah, maybe it's a rape joke, but the fact that you're laughing means that there was something true about it, you know? And that's pretty much the whole set is, okay, sure, maybe he's talking about Harvey Weinstein raping women, but the fact that you are uncomfortable but still smiling means that, you know, he kind of got to you a little bit. And I think it was one of the most powerful pieces of art that got released this year, in my personal opinion. And I mean, I just rewatched it again like a week ago. It's what got me thinking about it. I've probably seen that set like 8 or 9 times just in the past year, because it just continues to stay relevant. And my goddamn dog is barking in the fucking background.
I love what you say about, you know, like smiling or laughing even through all this really tough shit. And because that's honestly how I felt about 8th grade too. And I think it's kind of funny, like, with exception to our last couple items, like we kind of organized these fairly like haphazardly, but I feel like
you don't say.
I feel surprise on this podcast. But I feel like it's sort of cool to like see these things next to each other, because these guys, Bo Burnham and Dave Chappelle, are kind of our like respective thought leaders of like 2018 for us personally. I think like, wouldn't you say so?
I definitely say so. Like, I know. I mean, I've watched Bo Burnham's stuff since I was like in high school. I know you have too. But I mean, since I was in 8th grade, I've been watching Dave Chappelle, and maybe even a little bit before that too. Like, and I mean, I followed. They kind of went through like similar cycles. Now that you mentioned it, like Bo Burnham like had that crash and burn sort of like thing that happened to him where he had to step away from the spotlight because the pressure was too much. But Dave Chappelle kind of had a similar thing talked about in The Bird Revelation heavily, where he also took a step away from Hollywood voluntarily, not so involuntarily. You know, it's kind of left up for you to decide. But they had these kind of inward journeys that they had to go to before they returned back to the microphone, and they both became way stronger artists because of it. Like, not to say Dave Chappelle's old shit isn't really riveting and funny. Like, he was always a really thoughtful, intelligent comedian who was able to talk about race or politics or gang violence or anything really, like in a way that really made you rethink the whole situation. But I think going to Africa and getting his career smeared by Hollywood because he said no when nobody else would, made him a stronger person. I think Bo's the same way. Like, he looked at himself and was like, I'm gonna die up here if I don't like get away. Like, I'm miserable. And taking a step back and then coming back and making possibly one of the most impactful movies of the year, like, you know, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens after some serious self-reflection. And so I think that's, you know, I want your take on it, but I think you're absolutely right. Like, we both have our respected kind of idols in both of these men.
Yeah, I think you said it really well. I think it's at the end of the day, like, their reflection sort of led to a broad cultural reflection. By disappearing, they both were able to gain so much clarity, and Dave Chappelle came back with, controversially so, but specials that each of us think is really great. And Bo Burnham came back with a movie that is an amazing little like time capsule of modern culture. And so this is something that, you know, we've sort of talked back and forth about this year, is sort of the funny appeal that dynamic has now in the state of like always being public and your life being more public than ever. There's just an attraction of disappearing and just like going away for a while. And I think that it matters that these two guys who managed to speak so incisively into the way we feel right now. It's not even that they were like able to do it; they just made themselves do it, and maybe they had to do it. So I'm gonna be thinking about that. You said that well.
Thank you. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
The fourth thing I wanted to talk about today. I'm really glad we're talking about this. Sorry. Continue, Tyler, please. I'll cut that. And I'll just cut myself out of it. You cut that shit.
All right, fuck. Sorry. Go.
Fourth thing we're talking about on our Best of 2018 episode. I'm glad we're talking about it. It's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and I was trying to get another movie onto this list.
But I really wanted to talk about this one again. Like, we just did this. I'm pretty sure it was the last episode that we fucking did, and here we go again. That's how good it was.
Yeah, and here's what brought it over the top for me. The more I've thought about this movie, I went and saw it twice, and this clarified a lot the second time. I wanted this movie so badly, and I don't think I really realized it, but I was so bored with superhero movies. I was so bored with them. And it wasn't like, it's not even that they're bad. They're usually fine. And they're inoffensive, but
they're formulaic. But that's
they're
I don't
formulaic,
like. I hate
and
that. We talked about that again with Black Panther, not to keep bringing it up, but that's exactly the reason we didn't like Black Panther. It's like, there's no besides having a black guy as the main cast, which is, divisive because there's some people in this world who can't fucking stand that for some reason. There's nothing really like edgy or different about that movie at all. At all. It's exactly the same as Thor. It's exactly the same as Spider-Man Homecoming. They just do the same shit over and over and over again, and people buy it up for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, Black Panther had ideas, it had a little bit of spice, but it just followed the same beats. And it was so cool to walk into a superhero movie and be legitimately blown away by its ambition, its style, its music, its visuals, its humor, the drama, the action. It was all so good.
Calm down, Tyler.
Dude, I'm getting pumped. But this is...
You sound like a 1920s Radio City Hall commercial. The drama, the action, the can.
You'll have to see it twice. I'm so excited to feel that excited about a movie that a superhero movie is making me is putting so much energy in me, and I have such a fondness for this movie, and that's before you get to all the cool things it says about, anyone can wear the mask, anyone can be Spider-Man. Spider-Man has always been that superhero that, and you said it on our review, the Superman that everyone can kind of put themselves in his shoes and think, I think I know what that's like. I think I know what it's like to be Spider-Man, or Spider-Man knows what it's like to be me. Mm-hmm. And that's
I'm getting goosebumps right now. You just talking about it. It invokes that sort of emotion, like we talked about before. That the reason Peter Parker is so lovable is because he's any one of us. He's a 26-year-old grad student. We're 25, 24, 26. We're around that age. He's a superhero that I can look at and be like, I'm Superman. Or I'm Spider-Man. Fuck Superman. I'm Spider-Man, It's it's the Spartacus of I am Spartacus sort of
right.
superhero. Just visually, storytelling wise, it was awesome. It was the first comic. There have been graphic novel movies before, and good ones to look up or reference are even though they're not in necessarily the same genre. Something like V for Vendetta is kind of a good, the way that it's filmed is kind of comic booky as well. Or a good one is Sin City. Any of those really darker graphic novel ones. But this is the first one where it's comic book, micro dot comic book print. It feels like that come to life. And it takes a little while to kind of adjust to the art style, I will say. But once you're in, man, nothing exists around you. It's you have blinders on and you're just mesmerized by all the pretty colors.
Yeah, and it's I love that you brought up its very passionate comic bookness. It's so unashamed to be a comic book movie. I feel now, and this is probably because there's just so many, these superhero movies want to differentiate themselves by brushing up against other genres, and that's how we get Ant-Man's gonna be a heist movie, and then Ant-Man comes out. Guess what? Not a fucking heist movie. It's a superhero movie.
It's a superhero movie with a couple of robberies in it.
Yeah, and it's Thor's gonna be a fantasy movie. Not a fucking fantasy movie. It's a superhero movie. Iron Man, a war movie. Just shut the fuck up. It's not they're all the same. They're all the same.
I would say there are a few standouts in pretty much the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, but other than that, they all. You're right, man. It's a superhero movie first and foremost, and then it has some cool kind of shit thrown into it. Standouts are the most recent one, honestly, Thor Ragnarok, really kind of stands out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that one. Really, I actually had a lot of fun with that movie. It was still a superhero movie, but it had enough crazy kind of shit going on in it that I'm oh yeah, right, this is a Thor movie. That's the Hulk, you kind of lose yourself in the pretty colors once again, and
yeah,
I think hopefully the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I don't know where they're planning on taking it now that the Avengers thing is kind of coming to an end, and all of these people that have been attached to it for almost 15 years are finally being all right, we're done, but hopefully the next generation is able to take a little bit more risk like this. I think like you talked about comedians that are able to go 100 so everyone else can go 80. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is able to go 100 so that all the other superhero movies can be like, oh, we can be a little bit riskier and people will actually still come and see this. You know, you need that one really successful fringe movie so that all the other ones can come in and be like, okay, we can add a couple crazy things in this one and maybe make it a little bit different. And hopefully we get more Guardians of the Galaxy 1s than we do like Iron Man 2s.
Yeah. And to put a bow on it, I love that its risks were, we are going to go to the extreme as a comic book movie. Like, we're not going to try to like force this other genre or like style or anything. We love being a comic book movie. We love being a superhero movie. And it kind of helped me like move past my cynicism about the genre in a way, because I was like, oh wow, like I can love a superhero comic book movie because it's a superhero comic book movie.
Right.
That doesn't like automatically disqualify it anymore, which I like really appreciated in a funny way.
I know, yeah, like it kind of was like a couple of jumper cables to the nuts, you know.
Yeah,
sorry, I was trying to think of literally any other body part, but I was like, fuck it. I couldn't think of it. It's a couple of jumper cables.
Your brain goes to nipples for half a second. Oh, no.
Dude, for half a second, I'm like, how is that any better? Like, how is that better, Emilio? I was like, fuck it, just go full Monty. Yes, that's a couple jumper cables to the nuts. Like, it really wakes you up, and you're like, whoa, all right, cool. I'm like, it has the same effect on me that like the original Spider-Man, like Sam Raimi films did the first time, where I was like, wow, cool, superhero movies. And then by the time like Captain America 2 came out, I was like, oh fuck, superhero movies.
Yeah.
Like it took over Hollywood, man. And I've been ever since 2010, I've just been waiting for it to go away, honestly. It's been like almost a decade of fuck this shit.
Yeah. That feeling of fatigue, I think relates a little bit to our next movie. You ended up pulling at the midnight hour Black Klansman onto our Best of 2018 episode. I'm glad you did, but why don't you tell us why this is here?
Oh, man, I don't know if you ever listened to that the Kendrick Lamar album that came out like a couple of years ago. Do you remember what the fuck was that called? To Pimp a Butterfly. Oh, sure. The one that did you remember all the memes of like all the college white kids who like listened to Pimp a Butterfly for the first time, and they're all in like those like sweater things and like the little like Kwanzaa caps and shit like that? That's honestly what I feel like going into this list, because pulling the Black Klansman, it kind of makes me feel like I was really like pandering, but I wasn't, man. Like, I'm not a huge Spike Lee fan personally. I think he kind of goes over the top a lot with a lot of his movies. That being said, I do love Inside Man. I'm a big World War II buff, so I do like Miracle of St. Anne. And I love Black Klansman. Like, it's just a damn good story. It's funny as hell, honestly. I just rewatched it like not that long ago, my second viewing. Hilarious, man. I'm still like cracking up over it, and it's got that Spike Lee style where it's just like really in your face, like sounds like fuck white America, like really. But you know what? As a white American, kind of need that every once in a while. You kind of need like a little slap around to get you like out of whatever bullshit you're into, and kind of get you thinking about bigger picture stuff. And this, like the Bird Revelation, this really talks about it's a movie that takes place in the 1970s. It's about the first black police officer in the Colorado Springs Police Department and how he infiltrates the Ku Klux Klan chapter that's operating out of his area, and with the help of other white officers is able to like extort information out of them and pretty much like shut them down in that area, right? That's the basis for it. But even though it takes place in the 1970s, there are quite a few moments where it's almost, I mean, it is breaking the fourth wall in everything but name, where they're talking about like, oh, a KKK member is president of the United States? You don't say, this crazy America where this would never happen. You might as well be looking at the thing and be like, fuck Trump, you know? Like, that's kind of the point. Yeah. But he's not as like blunt about it, and it's very tongue-in-cheek and very like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But then, I mean, by the time you get to the very end of the movie, this is a spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, the last like 2 to 3 minutes of the movie are dedicated to raw footage of the Charlottesville marches that happened at, I guess it was towards the end of 2017. I think it wasn't 2018 that they happened, but
right.
If you've been living under a rock, or if you're not an American, what happened in Charlottesville was pretty much all the racists, once certain people won office, came out and were like, "Oh, cool, we can come out of hiding now." Like, fuck Jews, yeah! Like, they really got really excited about it. It was like throwing like a reverse bat mitzvah. They got all these fucking like tiki torches from Home Depot and these matching white polos, and overall just looked like a bunch of idiots. But it was fucking scary, man, to be like, oh shit, there's like a neo-Nazi rally in Charlottesville, and it eventually ended up with the death of a young woman who was struck and killed by a neo-Nazi protester who was driving a car through a crowd of people. And it's pretty much raw footage of that person getting hit and killed. A big fuck you to the United States government, and then an upside down American flag, really to just the cherry on top of this big fuck you movie. And that's why I loved it. I kind of sympathize. I mean, I definitely sympathize, but I also like, if you know me personally, I'm not afraid to tell someone to go fuck themselves, like, to their face. And that sounds like bragging, but really it has gotten me in trouble quite a few times. But Spike Lee is known for that, and this was probably his best movie in years, probably since Inside Man, to be completely honest. So if you haven't seen BlacKkKlansman, I recommend it. The cinematography for it's amazing. There's like a couple scenes in it where, I don't know if you remember the Stokely Carmichael scene where he's just like giving this like impassioned speech, and it's just like all these like floating like young Black American faces like looking to the future and just being inspired, and it's just it's fucking inspirational, man. Like you don't have to be Black to enjoy it. I don't know like if Black people enjoy it even more because they're Black. I couldn't tell you. But as a half Italian, half Iranian, Middle Eastern looking male, I enjoyed the living shit out of it. And my blonde hair, blue eyed girlfriend fucking loved that movie. So give it a chance because it's really good.
It's good. I'll remember it to sort of like put on like my movie critic hat for a second. And this is how I think I wrote about it too. But for a long time, movies that came out during the Trump administration that were like vaguely political in some ways, or vaguely like, commentating socially or anything, like a movie like Get Out. You had these movies that were written with a Hillary Clinton White House in mind. And so they ended up being like weirdly responsive to like our national shock because they're reflective of like this whole other brand of ideas, and they end up standing for all these other things that they didn't really intend to stand for.
Yeah. It's like an alternate universe where she was president, sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
And BlacKkKlansman is honestly kind of cool because it is the first really mainstream movie, widely seen movie, financially successful movie, Oscar attention receiving movie to be actively responding to Trump. It knows who's in power, and it is about that landscape. And I think that makes the movie. It makes me really glad we're talking about it on a Best of 2018 episode, but it's also like weirdly rewatchable for that, and is probably going to be rewatchable for that years and years to come.
I know. Yeah.
God, holy shit! Like that was. It's almost like a weird like. It's not a. It's like a. There's a primary source, and then what's like the other one?
Secondary.
Yeah, like a secondary source. Yeah, it's like no, but you're right. It's, I guess so, right?
Duh.
I'm a writer, but
they pay you for this.
But it's like a half primary source, half secondary source, I guess. Where like it has all this like news footage, but then it's commentating on that, and it's responding to that, and it's bringing in all these voices to speak on that and represent that. And then it's also, like you said, just a damn good movie. John David Washington is awesome in it. Fucking Topher Grace is.
Oh yeah, that's
I think,
right.
like,
He did like really good.
That's the thing. Like he's not gonna like get any love because he fucking plays David Duke. But dude, he's really good in it, and
Yeah,
he really commits.
It's like playing a good Hitler. You're never gonna get a nomination for it, but it's tip of the cap there, Topher Grace. He played an excellent Hitler, And the really big box office driver probably is Adam Driver because he's so
hell yeah.
popular right now. Like, and just the fact, I mean, he did a good performance too because he had to play a deplorable. He had to go undercover and say the N-word quite a few times to black people, which I can imagine is probably not easy as an actor, even though it's your craft. Like, oof, that's a tough one. But yeah, Washington did an excellent job. If you are a fan of Denzel, it is his son, and they look pretty similar, but god damn it, do they sound similar. Like, if you close your eyes during an interview with that guy, like, it sounds exactly like his dad. I just get like flashbacks to like Training Day or like Book of Eli or something like that, like
right?
John Q or something.
Yeah. That's BlacKkKlansman. That is our fifth artifact on Best of 2018. The last one, I am kind of
this one's all you, baby.
Standing alone on. I chose the Americans, and I also wanted the Americans to be our last thing that we talked about. They kind of like took us toward the exit ramp. I was thinking a lot. I wanted to do a TV show on this episode, and there was I don't think it was that great of a year for TV, but there were good shows, and you think of things like Homecoming on Amazon and Atlanta on FX, Barry on HBO certainly. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah, I was thinking about talking about that one too, but
yeah, but when I think about these types of lists and the ways people put them together, they often just be like, all right, let's just like assemble the best things. But I think that they hold so much more value as things we can look back on and be like, oh yeah, like watching that really felt like being in 2018, or listening to that or playing that. Really, like, that was really what that year felt like. And when I think about 2018, and this might be like become a little personal, but it really felt like
Tyler.
Yeah, it really felt like a year that was about allegiances and about loyalties more than any year I've ever been alive, I think, where like every conversation you had, every relationship you had was defined more and more by the kinds of things you aligned with. And I remember all these significant moments from the year where, whether it was like going back home to visit friends, or like being on dates, or talking on the phone with my family across the country, where these topics would come up and it would feel like you're about to walk into a minefield where you can tell, like, I remember talking to people and they are like gearing up to tell me like, oh, by the way, like, I voted for Trump 2 years ago. And like,
really? Did you actually get like confessions like that?
Yeah, more than one.
Interesting. Like, were they like, not to interrupt because you're on like a roll here, but like,
it's okay.
I always find this very interesting. I just had the worst fucking day ever where I spent an entire like 6-hour period with like an unapologetic Trump voter, and that's not why he's the worst. I know Trump voters who I get along with fine. They just voted for Trump. This white gentleman thought it would be okay to say the N-word like 5 times in front of me, man. Like, I just, oh god, it was. I can tell you later, but like, so I'm always very interested to see like what other people's kind of reactions are to having family or friends that are like that. So were they like, hey man, like, I just want you to know, like, I voted for Trump, or did it just come up with conversation like, oh yeah, fuck Hill Dog, I voted for Trump, like that sort of stuff? Like, how does that play out?
I think it kind of starts with a conversation like this where everyone can kind of agree, and you said this when we were talking about BlacKkKlansman. it always starts with a conversation of like, oh, things sure are crazy now, huh? Everyone agrees there's chaos. And and I really like the way you said that. Everyone agrees that there's chaos. But when it comes to like, when the conversation turns to like sourcing the chaos, then it becomes like a conversation that's full of like very careful phrasing and a lot of like dancing around certain things. And it is sort of funny because the default is, well, it's okay to just like say if you're moderate or liberal. Like you can just kind of come right out with it and feel very safe.
Yes.
But what I've realized this year is that if you are conservative, even more so if you voted for Trump, not even if you like really support him now, but if you voted for him, it is a very unsafe thing to admit, no matter who you're talking to. And so it just like realizing that was an intense weight for people, where it was like, wow, like once I say this, I wonder if our relationship is going to change. Once people know this about me, I wonder if I'm going to be seen as X type of person from here on out.
It's like kind of coming out of the closet.
Yeah,
like
in a funny way, right?
In a fucked up, like neo-conservative Republican way. It is there. I mean, so I have a follow-up question, but
sure.
Is it so? These people that talk to you about this, are they around your age, like younger than 40? What's like the age demographic here? Because I have a markedly different experience with just exactly what you're talking about. But I have it, those experiences that I've had have been older people, like, 45, 50, 60-year-old people. And it's completely different than what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, great important question. Everyone who I have this experience with is our age. But if I talk to someone who is of our parents' generation, no filter. They are fine.
There's completely unapologetic. Yeah, they have no fear.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There is a bar that is like a half mile from my house in Orlando that me and my roommates go to every now and then. And it is like, when I call home and like tell my parents about it, it is like the Trump supporter bar. Like you walk in, and if there's CNN on one of the TVs and you strike up a conversation with one of the barflies, like they'll just come right out with it and be like, man, CNN is so fucked up and biased. You're like, holy shit. Like,
yeah,
they're just like real aggressive and talking about all kinds of like fake news. Like,
goddamn fake news, liberal media's going fucking in the Jews. It's like, Jesus. All right, old timer. I'll catch you later.
Yeah. Like, I've met, fake news stands in that bar. I've met climate change deniers in that bar. I've met tons of Trump supporters in that bar. Like, I've met people who are skeptical about all kinds of things where I'm like, I feel like there's a consensus on this. But all of that experience collectively has really like affirmed that idea of like, if I'm going to remember anything about this year in terms of like the way I interacted with other people, the way I viewed my relationships with other people, the way they view the relationships with me, it comes down to these like allegiances, alignments, and loyalties. And that's what the Americans is all about and was always about, is here are these two Soviet spies living in the middle of Washington, D.C. Their kids don't know who they are. Their FBI neighbor doesn't know who they are. And
I think he's up from his nap. Theo, hey, knock it off. Go back to sleep, buddy. Sorry about that. Continue.
It's okay. And as their circumstances become more dire and more complicated, they have to start choosing what alignments, what allegiances are most important to them. Is it to their family or is it to their country? Is it, to the friendships that they've made with their neighbors, or is it to their cause? When their daughter starts going to church, like they're Soviets, they're communists, they're atheists, yeah. And a pivotal scene in the series is when their teenage daughter does some like dumb little teenage rebellion thing and says like, oh, I'm going to go, go with like my church group and ignore your thing. Crazy scene in the show, but it's this fight in the kitchen where the dad, who's a spy, freaks out at her and screams in her face, how can you respect Jesus but not us? And I feel like those kinds of conversations, especially when you're getting to like what it means to be a patriot and what it means to be loyal to your family and what it means to be a good friend and what it means even to be a good spouse. Like I know married couples who voted differently. All of that tension and all of that conflict of what's going to be most important to me. Am I going to let this relationship dissolve because this person voted differently than me? Am I going to go home for Thanksgiving even if I know that the conversation is going to be really, really hard to sit through? All of those questions are more prominent in my life now than they ever were. And that's why The Americans is in this episode for me, because the show is all about those feelings and those conflicts. And yeah, it's not the most visually creative thing. It's not the most structurally creative show on TV, but I don't think anything captured what 2018 felt like to me in terms of the political climate and social climate more than The Americans. We all know it's chaos. Like, we all agree that it's chaos, but where our allegiances and loyalties fall within that chaos is starting to define how we relate to each other. And that is so hard for everyone to navigate. And I don't have any answers, but when I watched that show, it illuminated that everyone is struggling that way, and that these questions are critical and important. They're how we relate to each other and how we decide what's important in our lives. And that's something I'm going to remember for a long time. And that the show ended this year too, and brought all of those to the forefront, and all of those confrontations where people have to decide once and for all with consequences. Okay, if I pick my country here, that means we're going to have to leave our family behind. Mm-hmm. If I pick my family here, that means our country is going to call us treasonous, and we're going to be seen as traitors. Like, those kinds of words, like treason, traitor, family, alone, belonging, all that stuff. Like, man, I think about that stuff all the time now, and I'm glad that a show met me there.
Yeah, very poetic, Tyler. You should probably write that down. Like, that was good. For people who don't know, like, we talked about this list like 10 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, before we did the show, and Tyler, again, kind of like the Black Klansman, threw this one out last minute, like The Americans. I'm like, really? The Americans? He's like, I'm going to tie it in, man. And I'm like, oh, all right, man, you're going to have to sell it. But yeah, you just fucking sold it, dude. I watched the first season of the show, the first 2 seasons, season and a half. Okay. So I kind of understand what you're talking about in the way that, because I know these characters a little bit, so it wasn't completely lost on me, like what they look like and how they act. And sure. I mean, I think you're right. Like, a lot of it boils down to these loyalties that you described, but like what really makes me think is like, okay, so we're young, we're in our 20s, 24, 25, 26. I've said that fucking 3 times this episode.
Yeah.
I look at the chaos because I studied political science and international affairs. I graduated like 4 months after Trump got elected. And I went to school. I went to political science, like a political science class, the next day after he got elected. And everyone was, man, it was like a fucking graveyard. Like, it's yes. Gray. It was gray. I remember that. I will never forget that class. And I'll never forget what happened in that class. Like everyone, I went to a liberal school, and all your barfly patrons, they listen to us, will probably be like, oh, fucking, I bet they were all sitting around singing Kumbaya. Kind of. Yeah, and it was nice, actually, so fuck you. Like, kind of. The teacher came in, and it was an Israeli-Palestinian, discussion class. We were talking about the history of Israel-Palestine. So already there's contention, because, we'd have Arabs in the class, we'd have Palestinians, there's Jews, Americans, Italians, French. It was a very, multicultural school, and a very multicultural university, and a very multicultural fucking class. But what was really awesome was, after he won, the teacher was like, okay, and this guy's British, so he's talking in a soft, British accent, but he's like, okay, so we're gonna take the first 20 minutes of class and just sort of decompress, talk about if there's anything bothering us, anything we want to talk about, and people just went around and gave words of support and just shock and stuff like that, but everyone was just I said something in particular, and not to brag or anything like that, but somebody came up to me afterwards and was like, hey, what you said was was good, man. Thank you. I was like, ah, cool.
Oh.
I can't remember exactly. Oh, I can't remember the exact words, but essentially what I said was how we're feeling right here, right now. Don't anyone ever forget that, because what happens with situations like this is 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, we forget what it was like to be kicked down like this. Where we as a generation came together and were like, we want this person to be our president. We want this person. And in multiple instances, not just the Trump thing, because if you were a Bernie Sanders supporter, you already got a little dose of this before when he didn't win the nomination.
Right.
Don't forget what it's like to be down like this, because we're going to need to kind of fight for the next 4 years, and then after that, depending on the outcome, we may need to fight more, or if we win, we don't want to be the type of people who kind of forgot where we came from. And so I just said, don't forget what this is like right now, because this is going to be really important for the rest of our lives. And people were just crying, man. It was fucking sucked. I'm sure it sounded better 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but I will always remember that. And I know, like I said before, chaos is everywhere, and it seems to only be getting worse. We're on day 13, 14 of a government shutdown that Trump has said he can hold out for months and years, and he's holding 800,000 people hostage. And regardless of what you think about that, there are Democrats and there are Republicans that are out of work right now because of decisions that our government are making. And there's 2 more years of this.
Yeah.
There's 2 more years of this. So
yeah,
2018 was a bit of a bummer, I will say that. As great as we had a time on this podcast, looking back, it was a war for the soul of America. And that sounds dramatic, but that's really what it is, and we're still fighting. And I'm scared, man. I'm scared. Maybe we don't pull through. America's always the country we're the underdogs. We always pull through when people don't give us credit, and we say stupid shit. Americans are known for doing stupid shit, and then having to pull themselves out of the fire later. But God, I fucking hope we can pull ourselves out of the fire, because it's scary, man. Scary time to be an American. It's a scary time to be this young. And I think, but the point that I was trying to make, I'm sorry I'm taking up so much time, 5 minutes, is
that's okay.
Is I think as young as we are, it's kind of disappointing to see a lot of our parents and older generation. I know my parents, they all voted for Trump. Their friends all voted for Trump. Their colleagues all voted for Trump. Anyone really older than us, it was 60-40. Honestly, it wasn't even 50-50. It's a pretty good chance that most of the people older than us, voted for him. It's weird, because I feel like they forgot where they kind of came from. We always look at the hippie movement that happened in the 60s and 70s as our parents' time to be young and rebellious and do drugs in the summer of love, man. All that bullshit. And then everyone likes to joke that in the 80s they sold out, but you didn't ever want to believe it. You wanted to say okay, yeah, cool, they're working on Wall Street and doing blow, but deep down there's that rebellious teenager who was still saying fuck the system and getting into fights over Thanksgiving because Nixon got elected.
Yeah.
Before Trump, Nixon was the asshole president that nobody liked and would divide families, and the young hated the old and the old hated the young because they voted for this like loudmouth, like kleptocrat as president.
Yeah.
And you think, well, we're never going to do that again. And here we fucking are. And we're getting into arguments again. And there's protests. And there's people getting hit in the head with batons on the street. And there's people my age getting fucking killed. Like, getting killed, you know?
Right.
And so it just, I feel like we forgot where we came from. And if we ever do make it out of this, like, I'll say what I said to my class. Don't forget what this feels like, man. Like, don't forget, because... you know, when we're our parents' age, we will probably have to... history kind of repeats itself, you know? And this won't be the last time that we see something like this happen, probably even in our lifetimes. And I just don't want to be like my parents and fuck up again when they really should have seen the blood in the water. But they decided they cared less about what their kids and grandkids thought and more about what they thought. And so they voted that way. You can't fault them, but you just have to ask, like, what the fuck? Why? You know?
Yeah, that's really smart, and that makes me not like it is, because I think I actually, and I look at most of the things on our list: 8th grade, the Bird Revolution, Black Klansman, the Americans. It's like what you say; they all lean into those kind of horrible, tense, uncomfortable, painful feelings of being in a time that is really uncertain and is really frustrating or enraging. Like Black Klansman is a really angry movie, and it's not even just like, oh, like isn't this kind of hard? It's like, doesn't it just fucking piss you off? And I think, like, all of this, whether it kind of has that edge of Black Klansman or sort of like the steadiness of the Americans, or the sort of just like point a camera at it and just judge it for yourself quality of 8th grade, all of that is really cathartic in a funny way. And honestly, dude, like, that's part of why I like doing this podcast is so great. Is like being able to like talk about it and break it all down, and it is cathartic too. And you know, like people shit on podcasts and all that stuff, but no matter if 0 people are listening or 1 dad is listening, or you know,
hi Vince.
Hey Vince. if 500,000 people a week are listening, it still matters when you lean into it, and you lean into all the messy stuff and all the conflict and all the stuff that hurts. And like, I'm glad people are doing that, and people should do it more.
Yeah.
And so I agree wholeheartedly with what you said, and you know, even hearing it now, I'm glad you said it.
Cool, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Do you have I think that's a good place to end it.
I think it is too. Like, we were gonna do honorable mentions, but like, fuck them. They didn't make the list for a reason, I guess. I mean, on a better note, you know, we got some stuff planned for next year, and gonna try and take the show in a little bit of a different direction.
Yeah.
A lot of miming, I think, is what we're thinking, right? A lot of miming. We're actually going to turn this into a workout podcast called The Bodcast. So we'll see you suckers later. But no, we got some stuff. We got, you know, we have some plans. Tyler, our creative director, I guess I'll call you. You know, got a promotion right here on the air.
Gee, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Our creative director has got some stuff cooking in that old noggin of his. So I mean, hopefully my dad likes it.
Keep the feedback coming, Vince. All right. Hey, that'll do it though for this episode and possibly this edition of Do This Thing On. Thanks so much everyone for listening, and hey, my guy, this is This is one of my favorite parts of the week. Every week.
You know what? Thanks, man. Like, we talked about this while we were in person, which is nice because it's nice to kind of do this face to face sometimes. It's cathartic. You know, I get to hang out with my dude, my man, and just shoot the shit. And yeah, I think we both agreed, like, we don't really care if anyone's listening. We like what we do, so fuck it, you know?
Yeah. So, with that, I think that's how we're going to end 2018. You guys know all the places to find us: SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, of course, all that stuff, Twitter. But we want to say thank you. It's been a strange year, a weird year, a hard year, but we somehow managed to have a lot of fun.
Yeah,
all of it.
Especially with that Bollywood episode. I don't know why that one stuck out to me, where I was like, what the fuck? All right.
that was a highlight, man.
All right,
awesome.
Well...
Bahubali!
All right, guys. Happy New Year's. Take it easy. We'll see you next time.